Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome back to Keeping Fish Simple. So in today's video, we're going to be doing a very highly requested video, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about how much money I made breeding angelfish. Now, I made a video a couple months ago about how much money I made breeding betters, and there's going to be a link to that video up here. But that video did really well. A lot of you guys enjoyed seeing, the behind the scenes of all these fish projects that I work on, and I do breed fish for profit. Now, a lot of people have been getting the wrong idea about my relationship with breeding fish for profit, and they think that I just treat these things as, living beings that just like poop out eggs for me, and I treat them really badly, and I just use these fish to make money. And that's definitely not my relationship with fish at all. I've been keeping fish for a very long time. I can promise you guys that all the fish that I keep and breed, I keep in really good conditions. I never try and, exploit the animals or use the animals to fill my pockets. That's not what this is about, and this is just because I've got a massive interest in creating things, and creating fish has just been one of the most enjoyable things that I've done in my entire life, and I've turned it into something that I can actually make a bit of money off of and actually turn into my living. So I just wanted to quickly get that out of the way before I started talking about all the profits that I made from breeding fish. In today's video, we're going to be specifically talking about my angelfish. As a lot of you guys would know, I was breeding a ton of angelfish. At the start of the year, I actually had probably like 8 pairs of angelfish, and since then I've actually dialed it back down to 1 pair of angelfish, which I rarely produce any of now, and you're going to discover those reasons why in this video. So the total number of money that I made from breeding angelfish when I went through all my invoices and calculated was $4,000 gross income, and this is all Australian dollars, by the way, over a period of about 8 months. Now, when I first started planning this fish room, a big part of my plans was going to be to produce a ton of angelfish. I was planning on having about 6 to 8 pairs of angelfish and producing predominantly angelfish in this fish room, and be making heaps and heaps of them and tons of different varieties. And when push came to shove and I actually did start producing a lot of angelfish, I ran into a couple of problems with the production of these guys and also the selling of these guys and the viability of the fish in this fish room. So the process for breeding these guys was to get pairs, and they would be in these tanks that you can see here, and I'd have a pair in each tank, and then that pair would lay eggs probably twice a month, and I'd get 300 to 400 eggs from those fish. And from that 300 to 400, I'd probably have about 250 survive, which I'd grow out on this side of the fish room, and then they would obviously be sold. So to get my pairs, I had a few pairs left over from my previous fish room, and they were all just koi pairs, so I had, I think, 2 pairs from there. And I actually bought a bunch of fish from a local breeder near me who breeds tons of different types of species of angelfish, and actually is the main supplier of most of the local bred angelfish in my region. And I bought a ton of them, and later on I'd figure out that this was actually probably going to be what made this fish not viable. But I bought a ton of them at like that small size, grew them out for 6 months, and then started producing them. So I actually made a lot of money from the growing out of these fish and selling them as adults, because I'd buy them for a couple of bucks each, and then I'd sell them as adults for 10 to 15 bucks each. So I was actually making quite a bit of money from doing that, and I've actually included that in my overall profit, because I did actually do some work here and grow these guys up and make profit that way. So I thought it'd be only fair to include this in my actual end number, the $4,000. So from that $4,000, that was probably only about 500 bucks that I made from that, and the rest was obviously from selling the angelfish. But anyways, I had these pairs, I was producing them, and I was getting quite a lot of angels coming through. I'd grow them out, and then I'd sell them to the shops. I didn't sell many of these guys wholesale. I sold a lot of them to the shops, and surprisingly I actually sold quite a lot on my website. I didn't include any of the money that I made from the sales on my website, because I thought that you guys wouldn't be able to really relate to that or be able to replicate those numbers easily, because obviously my website benefits from having this YouTube channel, which is really quite amazing, and I thank you guys so much for giving me this opportunity. If I was going to estimate, I probably made $2,000 extra, so that will factor in at the end, like into this being slightly viable for me, but not being completely viable. But yeah, I grew these guys up. I was producing koi angels for a little bit. I was selling them for the first 2 to 3 months, and then at that 4-month mark, I started getting all the other pairs ready to start breeding. I actually only started breeding 2 pairs, and then I'd pretty much completely filled up the fish room. My most productive pairs were my kois, which I discontinued because of their genetics. They just had really poor genetics, because I was using fish that I'd bred myself to make new fish. So I was using my F1s to crossing them into each other, and I was just getting tons of fish with bent fins. And I was producing a ton of Manuka Peru angelfish, which I still have a few of. I've actually got tanks full of them still, and I overproduced those, and I made so many of those. And selling those, I actually made quite a lot of money from selling those, but I definitely overproduced the angelfish in the fish room. So when it came to selling these guys, there was a few different ways I was selling them. I'd say 90% of them got sold to shops, and then I'd say the extra 10% got sold to a wholesaler. There was probably only 1 wholesale order there. I actually had a shop buy like a couple hundred from me, so that kind of counted as a wholesale order, but it was still to a shop. So selling these guys was pretty easy, because they all, like, they look the same. and shops would order about 30 to 50 of them at a time, depending on which variant, and then I could bring those in on top of the other things that they'd order. So they might order some bristlenose plecos or some rams, and I'd bring in the angels with that. That was pretty good. They were pretty consistently selling, like I was constantly turning over fish and I was selling lots of them. Everything kind of came undone because in my equations when I was setting up this fish room, when I was planning to breed these guys, I counted on getting a little bit of a higher price than I did actually end up getting, because I didn't realize the amount of people around me that were breeding these. And the original guy that I bought a bunch of those fish that I grew up to use as my brood stock was selling them for, I think, about $1.20 each to the shops, and I was planning on selling them for $3 each to the shops. So a few of the shops were taking them for $3 each, but once I'd filled up all those shops with my Manuka Perus that were like rare at the time, they slowly became not rare, and a lot of other people started producing them as well, and that brought the price right down. So, you know, selling 50 fish for $1.50 each, it doesn't really add up very well. That's kind of where I started coming undone. But anyways, let's get to the breakdown of the cost, because I did end up with $4,000, which does seem like a lot of money. And to a lot of people that is a lot of money, to a lot of people that might not be a lot of money. I'm not going to make a judgment there, because you'll quickly find out that it didn't end up being a lot of money for me, because there was a lot of costs associated with getting that $4,000. The first being the cost of the fish room and the equipment in this fish room. Now, I've talked about this in my last video. This fish room was very expensive to build, obviously, because of the size it is. So it's hard to really estimate how much of the space I was using for breeding the angelfish, because I breed a bunch of other things. But for the angelfish, I estimated that I probably spent about $1,200 on equipment, so $1,200. So instantly we're going to cut down our number from $4,000 to $2,800, which can still be quite a lot of money. Still, over an 8-month period of time trying to do this for profit, that's not a lot of money. As you guys will know, there's a lot of other things you could have been breeding in that time. Then we also have the cost of the brood stock. Now, the Manuka Peru angelfish actually cost me quite a lot of money at the start, and I bought 8 of them and killed them. I think it was like an ammonia spike or something like that when I was keeping them at my other house, waiting to bring them over, and I wasted like $500 of brood stock there. And then I got some more and grew those up, but I also had to spend money on getting all the other ones from the local breeder. So I estimated this cost at being around $1,000. So that instantly also brings down our number from $2,800 all the way down to $1,800, which is still pretty we're losing a lot of meat on the bone here, and you're starting to see how this project kind of came undone and wasn't really that viable for me. So we've got $1,800 left. Still decent amount of money if this was going to be like a short-term project. I mean, I wasted a long time in this project growing out the fish to get breeding stock, but we also have to consider the food that I spent on getting these guys to grow up. There was no real other expenses with these guys. I mean, equipment, food, water, and stuff like that. I've kind of just grouped like the cost of the water and the cost of, like, you know, medications and things like that, which wasn't very much, into the cost of the food. So this is like a round sum, but we're gonna say for food, for the whole project, I probably spent around $200. So we go from having $1,800 down to $1,600, and that was kind of the final number. Now, to get $1,600 is okay. If I'm being really honest, I wish I was producing something else within that time. I mean, I learned a lot from doing this project that I'm going to carry on into future projects, into future fish rooms. We also have to factor in the cost of the time that I spent on these guys. Now, these weren't as laborious as other fish in the fish room. Like, I didn't really spend that much time on these guys. I mean, I've got an automatic water change system in this fish room, and really the only thing I have to do with the angelfish was catch them out and net them, which did take a lot of time when it came to, you know, shipping out like 300 of these at a time. There's also the time that I had to spend on just taking out the tile and putting it in a container with some methylene blue and hatching the eggs out and moving the eggs into a grow out tank. But really, I didn't spend that much time on these guys, and I estimated that I probably only spent about 4 hours a week in total over that 8-month period. So I was spending 4 hours a week on these guys. We're just gonna say that there's about 4 weeks per month. So we're gonna take our 4 hours, multiply it by 4 to get the amount of time that we spent on these guys in a month, which is 16. And then we're gonna multiply that number by 8 for the 8 months that we spent on the project. And then we're gonna get 128 hours. I'm just looking at my calculator here. And then we can take our end 1600 and divide it by our 128 total hours. And you'll see we end up with $12.50 per hour spent on this project. Now, I know that there's different incomes across the world, and in certain countries the minimum wage is different. Here in Australia, I think the minimum wage is about $20 an hour for someone my age. So doing this project, I was actually losing money that I could have just been doing working at like McDonald's. Although I was doing something that I absolutely love and enjoy, this project in the end ended up being something that wasn't really viable. And as you can see, it's proven in the end number. And that's why I've moved a lot of my pairs on. And I've just left myself with one pair just so that I can produce it if I want to. I can make videos on them. They produce really high quality fry. and I can just add them to my wholesale list each month, and I don't really care about making too much money from them. They're just a bit of a passion thing for me. But yeah, I just wanted to make this video to show you guys, you know, not everything in this fish room is a massive success. I hope you guys can learn from this. If I was going to change anything about this project, and you know, the one thing that made this project not work is the fact that I'm in such a small fish room. I'm in a fish room that's 16 meters squared, and it's just a single car garage, and this fish room would have been okay for breeding angelfish if I only bred angelfish in here, but I do a bunch of other things in here, and part of the things that became a problem with breeding the angelfish in this fish room is growing them out in 4-foot tanks really wasn't viable. These guys need to be in massive outdoor ponds, probably like 1,000 litres big, to grow their fins properly and really grow rapidly and be able to get that turnover and have it make sense selling fish for $1.50 each and actually turn profit on that. So that was another problem with the angelfish, is that because I was growing them in too small a tanks, those little mini ammonia spikes, and the fins would kind of become stunted, and then if the fins became stunted and they didn't have straight fins, and I was competing against really high quality angels, especially high quality local ones, I couldn't sell those fish, and if I did, they had to be at really low cost, or I had to cull those fish, which was absolutely disappointing. So yeah, I mean, you can see how this project didn't work, and like I said, I just wanted this to be like a video just to share my experience. That's what this whole YouTube channel is about. Don't get like offended by anything I say. I mean, I'm just a guy with a YouTube channel, and this is all real information based off of my experience. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you guys learned something, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.